All right, so we've been telling the story about who?
Buttercup.
Buttercup. And what's Buttercup's son's name? Yodi.
Yodi.
And what are they?
They are the mommies and daddies.
Well, no. Buttercup is the daddy unicorn, and Yodi is the little unicorn. But what happened to Yodi's real daddy?
He died.
He died. But Buttercup said that he would take care of him. So today we're going to talk more about Buttercup and Yodi. So remember last time Buttercup and Yodi had swam in the forbidden water, right? But now they're back in the meadow and they're eating grass like this. Nom, 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 nom. Nom, 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 nom. Everybody eat the grass. Nom, 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 nom. And, all right, and then Buttercup said, "Hey, something's different today." And Yodi said, "Yeah, something's different, Buttercup."
It's a story?
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Buttercup's horn started to glow a pretty blue color. And Buttercup didn't know his horn was glowing. And Yodi said, "Buttercup!" And Buttercup said, "Leave me alone, I'm eating." Nom, 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 nom. And Yodi said, "Buttercup!" And Buttercup, "Leave me alone, I'm eating." And Yodi said, "Buttercup!" And Yodi said, "Stop talking, I'm eating." And so you know what Yodi did? He took his horn and poked Buttercup right in the booty. Doink! Ah! And Buttercup said, "Why'd you do that?" Yodi said, "I'm trying to get your attention. Your horn is glowing blue." And he said, "What?" And so he looked up in the air and he crossed his eyes so he could see his horn. And he said, "It's glowing." He says, "What does that mean?" And Yodi said, "I don't know, I'm eating, leave me alone." And so Buttercup said, "This means something. My horn is glowing. What do I do?" And all of a sudden, the most beautiful blue butterfly you've ever seen came flying down. Everybody do like this. And landed right on top of Buttercup's horn. And Buttercup said, "Yodi, look!" Yodi said, "I'm eating." Buttercup said, "Yodi, look! I'm eating." Yodi, look! "Okay, what is it, Buttercup?" "A butterfly!" And Yodi said, "It's so pretty, pretty, pretty." And Buttercup said, "But what is he doing on my horn?" And then all of a sudden, the butterfly shook his wings. Everybody shake yourself. Shake your wings. He shook his wings and blue dust flew off of the butterfly onto Buttercup's horn. And some of it flew onto Yodi's horn. And Yodi's horn started to glow blue now too. So both their horns are glowing. And Yodi said, "Ah! Buttercup, my horn is glowing!" And Buttercup said, "Ah! My horn is glowing too!" And then all of a sudden, they both started to float in the air. And Buttercup said, "Yodi, you're up in the air." And Yodi says, "Buttercup, you're in the air too." And they both looked at each other and went, "Ah! What's going on?" And the butterfly was still on Buttercup's horn and said, "Guys, calm down. You now have the power to fly." And Buttercup says, "Yeah!" And Yodi says, "I'm afraid of heights. I'm scared." And they said, Buttercup said, "No, it'll be okay. Let's go fly around the meadow." So they went high up in the sky and started to fly around the meadow. No, they didn't have wings. They just have horns. I mean, they just have their legs. So they moved their legs out like this. Yeah. Everybody move your legs. Yeah. And that's how they flew. Look, like an airplane. Yeah. And so they flew. No, they didn't bonk their heads. So they flew up high in the sky where the clouds are. And Yodi said, "It's so beautiful. And the clouds are so white. And I love it up here. And Buttercup said, yeah, it's great up here, Yodi. I even love those fireballs coming at us. And Yodi said, what fire coming at us? That fire right there. Ah! And so the fire was flying right at them, and they had to jump out of the way. Everybody jump out of the way. Ugh. You died by fire. You didn't move. You got to jump. Yeah. There you go. Okay. So the fire shoots at them, and they said, what was that? Who's trying to throw fire on us? And Buttercup said, I don't know, but I'm going to poke him with my horn. And all of a sudden, guess who comes flying into view? Those dragons.
Like we did in the other one?
That was in the other story. They're back. And they said, ha ha ha, now you're in the air, and that's where we live, and we're gonna eat ya. And Buttercup said, no! And Yodi said, no, I'm too young, don't eat me. And the dragons flew at Buttercup, shoosh, shoosh. And Buttercup, they tried to fly, and they moved their legs around, and then they said, Buttercup, the only way we can get away...
And Buttercup poked them in the booty?
No! And Buttercup told Yodi, he said, the only way we can get away from these dragons is we fly close to the ground. So they flew straight down, their horns pointing toward the ground. Everybody fly down. Ah! And Yodi said, we're going to crash. And Buttercup said, no, just hold on. The dragon's right behind them, flying close by, trying to bite their tails. Jump, chomp, chomp, chomp. And Buttercup said, keep going faster. And so they're flying toward the ground. And their cheeks are blowing because the wind's blowing. And then all of a sudden, Buttercup looks over at Yodi and grabs Yodi by the leg. And he pulls up and they fly upward. But it was too late for the dragons. They couldn't pull up because they were going too fast. And the dragons crashed into the ground. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody go boom with your feet. Boom, 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 boom. And the dragons were no more. And yeah, and Buttercup and Yodi, they went back to the ground and they said, that was a close one. No, there's no more poking in the booties. No, nobody got poked in the booty. All right? And then Yodi and Buttercup.
Yodi got poked in the booty.
No, Buttercup did it the first by Yodi, but that's okay. Anyway.
And Yodi too.
Now, and so they were back down on the ground. Listen to the story.
And the dragon.
Yeah, and they're back on the ground, and one of the dragons is still awake. And they said, Dragon, why did you try to eat us? And the dragon said, I don't know. So you know what they did? They got their horns and poked him. Doink! And he said, ah! And he flew away. The end.
And the other ones would die?
Yeah, the other ones, they didn't make it. That's the end of Buttercup flying in the air. I've got some good news and bad news, though.
Can you tell?
The bad news is, that's the end of the story. The good news is, I've got another Buttercup story for when I put you to bed. There's hundreds of them! Yeah! Everybody say goodnight.